You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Now let's analyze not just Operation Sagar Bandhu in Sri Lanka, but the pattern of humanitarian engagement of India across South Asia. It positions India as a reliable partner and a neighbor. And joining us for this discussion is Yashvardhan Sinha, former Indian High Commissioner to Sri Lanka. Thank you, Ambassador Sinha. Now, how does Operation Sagar Bandhu, in fact, reflect India's evolving role as a first responder in South Asia, especially for humanitarian crises?
India has been a first responder for many years now. If you recall, after the tsunami in 2004, it was India that had responded to the devastation caused in our neighborhood, particularly in Sri Lanka, but also Maldives. And similarly, later when Maldives had a water crisis, we were the first responders again. So India has had this policy of helping its neighbors. Fortunately, India also has the capability, the airlift and the capability to provide immediate assistance. In this case, within hours, our teams were in Sri Lanka. We had helicopters rescuing people from all over the country that had been affected by the cyclone Ditwa. And I'd like to offer my condolences for this huge loss of life and the devastation wrought by this cyclone in Sri Lanka.
Right.
But having said that, I understand India is always there to help.
Yes.
And I recall even when I was there, we had floods, and India was very quick to respond.
Indeed, Ambassador Sinha, but what sort of strategic goodwill does India gain by deploying military assets for disaster relief in neighboring countries?
I don't think we should measure it in terms of strategic gains, because this is purely a humanitarian effort. And as our Air Force, and in this case our Navy also, the INS Vikrant was there, and helicopters from Vikrant helped evacuate people. So I think it's a question of helping people, those in need. And Sri Lanka in many ways is our closest, dearest neighbor. So I think it is our duty, we are duty bound to help those in distress. So I think obviously this will go down, it has gone down well and will go down well with the people in Sri Lanka. But then we don't measure that in terms of strategic gains. We basically do it as a humanitarian gesture as part of our HADR, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief policy.
So let's expand on that. Repeated humanitarian missions like Operation Neer, Maitri, Karuna, Insaniyat, all these strengthen India's diplomatic credibility, doesn't it, in the region? How does that credibility affect us, let's say, in terms of goodwill?
I think it does. I mean, countries are increasingly realizing the salience of India and the capabilities of India in this regard. For instance, the Colombo Security Conclave, we just recently had a meeting in Delhi. One of the 5 pillars is humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. And I think our NDMA has done a very creditable job, not only in India, but also in our neighborhood. And countries beyond the neighborhood also look at India as a country, the first responder to crises in the region, particularly humanitarian disasters. In fact, I dare say that even if I recall, it was in 2005 or 6, India even offered to assist Pakistan when there was this devastating earthquake there. So I think India has always been in a position to help, and now with better capabilities and as our economy grows, we are in a better position to provide assistance to our neighbors.
True, indeed. You talk about capacity. So could India's consistent disaster relief efforts be a signal also, a complement to India's economic and security policies at home? And, all this, let's say, voice of the global South, in the larger picture of, South-South cooperation.
Absolutely. I think India's leadership role here is universally acknowledged. In fact, I recall Vaccine Maitri, for instance. Not only did we help our neighbors during COVID with all sorts of assistance, including vaccines, but even countries as far as the Caribbean, island countries there. And I recall when our Prime Minister was even, it this was acknowledged, and he was even awarded the highest honors by some of these countries. So I think India's consistent policy to help our neighbors and those in the global south has been greatly appreciated.
So, Ambassador Sinha, also to what extent do these operations, I mean, we are balancing humanitarian needs with certain long-term stability, isn't it? A long-term regional stability, trust that's being built amongst the neighborhoods. I mean, what is this whole neighborhood first policy's goal at the end of the day?
So basically, I think it is to foster good relations with all our neighbors and ensure that they are plugged into the growth that India is experiencing as the fastest growing large economy in the world. I recall when the Araglia protest took place in Sri Lanka, I think it was 2022 if I'm not mistaken,
yes.
And there was a huge economic downturn because of a combination of factors. It was India again that stepped in when even the multilateral institutions and a country like China, which had invested heavily in Sri Lanka, did not, initially at least. And we stepped in, and with assistance amounting to almost $4 billion, it was a huge effort, and it basically helped Sri Lanka pull itself by its bootstraps, and the recovery since then has basically been aided by the assistance rendered by India at a time of crucial need.
We leave it there. Thank you very much, Ambassador Yashvardhan Sinha, former Indian High Commissioner to Sri Lanka, for putting that into context.